where we left off with Qdrant and writing some code. So let's hop into Obsidian. So the first thing I want to talk about is this super cool video editing script that I found this morning. I've been editing a lot of videos lately because a lot of videos come out of the VODs, and I needed a way to remove silences from videos. Basically, I needed to. What I've noticed about making YouTube videos is that cuts are required to keep people's attention, and the only way to really do that is to go through and find all the silent bits and remove them one by one, which is what I thought I had to do until today, where I'm like, enough is enough. I'm dealing with this 35-minute clip. I don't want to go through and have to do this manually. But I found a script that does this. So let me play with this video real quick. So what you're seeing here is my Final Cut Pro timeline in real time. And what this script does is pretty magical. It uses FFmpeg to collect all the silent parts and then uses a JavaScript script to go and remove them. So watch this. So there's an FFmpeg script, and then it's literally just going through like crazy and just finding all the silences and just going fucking kamikaze on them. These silences are getting just obliterated one by one by one, and you can see how it like deals with this long silence coming up, for example, where it just skips ahead. So this is a 34-minute clip, and I would have had to manually go through and shorten it by like finding all these silences manually, which is, I think, is a big part of the editing process, and now gives me more latitude to focus on making cool edits that I normally wouldn't want to bother making because I just wouldn't have enough time to justify it or give an ROI for the video itself. But then watch this. So like it goes all the way through the video, and then it just starts deleting them like crazy. It like just automatically just goes through one by one and systematically just erases them off of the timeline. And it's super cool to watch. It was super mesmerizing. It was really cool to see how this happened automatically, in the sense that it felt kind of like delegating work, right? I was like, oh, hey, I need something to remove these silences for me. And it's like, I got you, fam. And it just goes through and automatically takes care of it. And the script itself wasn't even that long. You know, I found a few options on the web, but it's like these huge apps that you have to download and stuff like that. The only two things that you need to make this work are FFmpeg and JavaScript, and I guess Final Cut Pro. So 3 things. But look at it go. It's kind of a work of art. Wow. Well, so I should get rid of this huge silence. Saw that? Crazy. This is the stuff that gets me hype. So let me show how that works, actually. So we go to VSC. We can see that this is a Final Cut Pro timeline script written by Nate Murray in 2017. I'm glad that it still worked. It's 5 years after he created this script. So basically, it takes a silence detect log as input. So the silence detect log is generated by FFmpeg, and you basically just run this FFmpeg command with the name of your file that you have to export. So one thing that he doesn't say here is that you have to export the WAV file for the clip that you're looking at. And the way to do that is to go into Final Cut Pro and then go to the share and export as file, but then just do audio only and do a WAV file. So I took that audio only WAV file, I passed that into FFmpeg. I did literally this exact command. Other than that, it adds a little bit of margin for silence for each clip, which I thought was really good, because when I watched it back afterwards, it looked as if I would have done manually, right? Like the silences didn't feel hyper unnatural given the insane amount of speed that it adds to the workflow, which is nice. I think there's definitely some weird artifacts here and there because it is still a computer doing it, but it felt good for the most part. Like when I was watching that 34-minute clip, which got condensed to 13 minutes after it got rid of all the silence, which is, just goes to show you how crazy editing is. If editing can take a clip that's as long as a TV show and turn it into a 10-minute YouTube video, maybe 1/3 to 1/5 of content is, or excuse me, 1/3 to 1/2 of any output is probably useful. And that probably goes for life in a lot of ways. I know it works for code, it works for writing. I'm sure if you look on the scale of days, weeks, months, most of the time that you spend will just be commonplace, boring, regular day. But then once every blue moon, once every 2 weeks, once every 4 weeks, depending on how many opportunities you expose yourself to, you'll have a moment of craziness, of something different than the norm that deviates from the mean. So basically the way that this function works, at least as far as I can tell, is that, it uses Objective-C. It has to start Final Cut Pro. So funnily enough, I don't actually have Final Cut Pro. I have the Final Cut Pro trial still because my MacBook is new. So I didn't actually buy Final Cut Pro yet. So I've been doing all my editing on Final Cut Pro trial. But I went into Final Cut Pro trial. It says if it's running, and then it'll log it. So when it's open, it basically, I think that this unwraps its contents. I don't know what this does actually. Okay, so this is loading the file for the FFmpeg, I guess. This is the NS File Manager default manager. I'm not actually 100% sure. But we unwrap the contents of this load file function, which is probably just, again, a read file, I imagine. Parse silence file splits the contents by the new line, which is this silence detection. So we have this silence start for where a silence something starts, and then we also have where it ends and how long the duration of it is. So we get that out with regex, and then we get the silence end with regex. So we have the start match and an end match, which finds all the pairs. So if this has a start match, then it doesn't necessarily have to be an end match because it could be the last one. And then if pair end match is equal to 1, if start, then we push it to the pair, and then we return all these silences, this silence object. Then we go through and we load the file, the raw silence. Okay, so yeah, this is just this argv0 is the silence.txt. So yeah, this silence.txt is basically getting all of these out, because when we called this method, we called it with, I called it with / this method, or this function with silence.txt. Okay. So then we activate Final Cut Pro trial. We delay it by 1 second, then we move to time code. This is interesting. So here's a delay for the time code move. I guess this is to kind of like not make it too jarring. I don't know what this does necessarily. Oh, this also could probably add a little bit of delay around the sides, I guess. So we get the seconds and the deciseconds, which I've never even heard of. What is a decisecond? Decisecond. A decisecond is a SI unit of time equivalent to 10 to the -1 seconds. So there you go. So then we set the seconds of our date to this parse int seconds, and then we do some hour, minute, day stuff. And then I guess he does some partitioning, which is cool. So if it starts with a 09, I guess it'll get this 0 in front of it if it's less than, if it's 9 basically, or anything less than 10. So then we do some regex stuff. We log out the timecode keystroke, and then we do this SE object, which is what exactly? Oh, the system events. So the system events keystroke P using control down. So it basically literally manually types in control down P, types in the keystroke code for the seconds, presses enter, then uses the B command down key, which is blade, and then, oh, that's really great. It adds the margins for start margin and end margin. Then we go through each of these silent points. We delay by 0.05. We move to the time code. We delay again. we add a blade function, we delay again, we move to the time code, we delay, we blade, and then it deletes the silence. And now we need to go backwards because we're changing the total time as we go. And if you know anything about removing something from an array, it changes all the indexes in front of it. So you have to go backwards when you remove things from an array generally. So if the array is getting smaller. If the array is getting bigger, it's not a problem because you're just adding things. But if your array is getting smaller, the thing that was at 10 is no longer the same thing that's at index 10, for example. So now we go D, and then we move to the start of a time code, and then we hit this key, select the current clip, and then we press delete, which is the delete key for 51. Honestly, just a great script, very clever, 173 lines to do something as crazy as this is just so inspiring, to just be able to make something that is so automatic and can save so much time for the video editing process. And it wasn't even really that hard to do. Once I figured out the kind of like stuff that I had to do with FFmpeg, and it'll make my video editing process a lot easier on weekends, which as a one-person business who's trying to, make more videos of a certain level of quality and also stream and also write code and write other content on the internet, a tool like this is just a lifesaver, right? Like this is going to save so much time from my schedule. And speaking of time, it's time to talk about our second thing. After I go to the bathroom. I will be right back.